Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, and welcome to this September 4th, 2025 edition of the Kingsman and the CyBUr Guy podcast. I am one of your hosts, Director of CyBUr Operations for Five Eyes Limited, Darren Mott, and with me, as always, my co-host, Mike McQuaid, the Director of Commercial Threat Intelligence. Mike, welcome back.
I love Thursdays just because I get to look at you and have these wonderful podcasts, Darren.
Yeah.
Happy to be here as always.
Well, this is a different version of the podcast. If you're watching this, we recorded this previously because of the sensitive nature of some of the things we're going to talk about in this particular episode. But we're also turning over the reins to our Director of Business Operations for Five Eyes Limited, John McCarthy, who this podcast was his brainchild based on some stuff he did on LinkedIn. So we said, hey, why don't we just turn the podcast over to you? You run it, and we'll let it slide. We'll let it go from there. If you're listening to this on audio, then you're not looking at anything, but the audio will come out before the video. So if you're listening to this, you can go back and look at the video if you want to see our handsome faces. Otherwise, John, welcome to the podcast again. And this is your show. So go ahead, and if you want to rename it for the episode, feel free to rename the show if you want to, but this is yours. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you guys. Lovely to see you
Hold on, John,
both again, as always.
Your mic's not working.
Oh, here we go again.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It's working. That's fine.
They have nicknamed me head of IT because I spent half an hour literally trying to get my mic to work. On our version 2 now. Yes, the thought today was, when you guys are in the cyber community, and I've never been in that world before. You know, we came together because of the business context, and a lot of your connections, listening and watching this will be in your world, and I'm bringing in more into the commercial space. And what's really fascinating is myself getting to know you and the people whom you guys mix with. You have lived in different worlds to me, and a lot of people are really interested in your previous lives and what you did. And my sort of focus really is, how do we bring those skill sets, those experiences to help, normal people outside of the government. You guys kept the country safe, the world safe. How do we keep businesses safe? So for my listeners now, what I'd like you to do, if you don't mind, just give a quick introduction yourselves, Darren and Mike. Do a 1-minute introduction, a little about yourself, who you are, what you do, what you were in a previous life. Over to you, Darren, as the podcast host, I guess.
Thanks. Darren Mott, as you know, a retired FBI agent and used to be a high school teacher. That's a whole other story into itself. Joined the FBI in 2019. Ran cyber operations, did cyber investigations, managed cyber teams, did a whole bunch of stuff over the course of 20 years, retired in 2019, went to work in the commercial space, and now work with these two fellas doing what it is we do.
Good stuff. And over to you, Mike. Thank you, Darren.
So I had an opposite effect to Darren at the beginning. High school dropout, dyslexic, thought I was going to get a job at KFC, got rejected, and thought, what am I going to do in my life? Tried out law. It was drier than a sandal in the Sahara Desert, so I chinned that off. Then I was like, what am I going to do now? And then I tried my chances and applied for the UK intelligence community. Against all odds, I was successful and was able to enter the UK intelligence community. Started my career in cybersecurity as a security analyst, and then I got a bit bored of that and wanted to move around, so I've done different jobs. So I was an intelligence analyst, a data analyst, and then I went on to more the intelligence officer role. So I was doing counter threat intelligence and physical security penetration testing. That is not a cliche for anything other than what it is. It's a physical security penetration testing. It was the best job I've ever done in my life. I was responsible for physically penetrating. It sounds so bad when you say that. I was responsible for physically penetrating UK government buildings, UK airports, and UK military barracks. Then I left the UK intelligence community and went to work at Microsoft and AWS in their data center space. So throughout my whole career, I was TS cleared for American listeners and enhanced DV'd for the UK listeners. And that is me wrapped up in a nutshell. I did other sexy things as well, but we'll get onto that through this podcast. I guarantee we're going to get through it.
That's a whole different interview about your sexy stuff.
Hold on, John. Before you ask a question, I do have a question I never thought to ask in the years we've been talking to each other. You were a dyslexic high school dropout, but went to law school. What kind of lawyers you guys doing over there in the UK? If any, I mean, for God's sake, how hard is it to get in?
I work with a lot of lawyers. Oh, I'd love to hear the answer to this question.
Well, the fortunate part was when I went to college to do it, they were very good at managing my dyslexia. So school couldn't do it. They're just like, this guy is just stupid. We're not even going to bother with him. Then when I got to college, it was an adult environment, so they were better at managing it. So I had all the brains, I just couldn't put it down on paper. So I was the guy with the typewriter, the only guy in the class with a typewriter, like, So, proud moment. Proud
Okay.
moment.
I just
Fantastic.
wanted.
That's
Okay.
really cool.
Go ahead, John. Back to you. Back to you.
So yeah,
Okay.
what's the name of this podcast? Just so my people listening on LinkedIn who are picking up my post from Friday. What's the name of your podcast? The Kingsman, Cyber Guy.
The Kingsman, and the Cyber Guy.
All right. So you're the Cyber Guy, Darren. What's your kind of pedigree in cyber security, cyber intelligence? Because you've been in it you must have been one of the first guys on our side of the world to be getting involved with this.
Yeah, well, so when we're 2025, 26 years doing this, but my first touch of a computer was in 1977. So I was 11 years old. My mother was a programmer at a bank, and I went in with her once and got to play on the computer and was enraptured with it ever since. But ironically, did not go to college for computer science or anything. And that's a whole different story, simply because when I was in ninth grade, I had my appendix out and I'm like, hey, I think I'd like to be a doctor. So kind of went that route till I got to college. And then 2 years into college, I'm like, I don't know way I'm being a doctor. But I'd already kind of moved down the road. So I was already a biology major. And anyway, but I always stayed around computers. I owned a VIC-20, Commodore 64, played around with that for a while. And then when I got in the FBI, I had an aptitude for computers and software and things like that. And so I was luckily enough able to get into one of the initial cyber squads in Charlotte, North Carolina. And at the time, 56 field offices in the FBI in the US, only 16 had a dedicated cyber squad. And so I was on one of the first ones there and just kind of moved up from there and was able to do a lot of cool stuff because at the time, at the beginning, there were no rules around what we could do in cyber. So it was a little bit of a Wild West. It's a little more restricted now on what they can and can't do, but so I got lucky in at the right time and was able to do stuff that most guys wouldn't be able to do today that if they were to come in now.
So you're kind of one of the pioneers in cyberspace and cybersecurity. You were doing it for a long time.
Sort of, yeah. No, I mean the first real big cyber case the FBI ever had started in 1993 in Baltimore. And it was a child pornography case, but that was when the first computer was ever purchased for undercover purposes for the FBI. They certainly had computers, but they were just used for data entry and stuff like that. They weren't used as a tool for what bad guys were doing.
Wow, interesting. Right, and I'm back over to Mike. You've kind of explained your story a little bit, but the Kingsman was your nickname when you were in the services. I think you've kind of covered it, but do you want to add anything else to explain that? Because it is a cool film and a cool nickname too.
Yeah, so if the film The Kingsman, if you follow the storyline, if you ever saw it, it's a council estate kid, um, poor background, um, bad environment, and from the film, I believe he was unemployed, didn't know where he was going, and then his dad used to be a spy, and then he got killed in action. So my dad wasn't a spy, and he wasn't killed in action. That's probably the only different part. Um, but he got recruited into the Kingsman. Um, so when I was going through my journey, I'm also from a council estate, failed school, didn't know what direction I was going. I thought KFC was the pinnacle of my career I was going to get to. Um, and then surprised myself. I'd done the tests to join the community. It was 8 hours worth of tests. Problem solving, maths, English, team building, IQ. And it turned out my IQ was in the top 1% of the UK population.
Wow.
So going from school telling me you're stupid, just go to KFC, to being you're in the top 1% IQ, completely shocked myself and everybody around me at that time. And I also was against Cambridge and Oxford graduates who had double degrees and mums and dads were doctors and lawyers. And I got the highest test scores on the day out of everybody. The only thing I failed on was English. And that's where the dyslexia came in. So when I went in for my debrief for the test, I remember I was sat in this office opposite this guy, and it was like a dingy office. I remember in a really dirty, dingy office, but the seats were really comfortable. It was like really the odd thing in the room, right? I'm sat there and I'm just looking at him intensively. I'm just waiting for him to make noise, move, make a sound, something. And he was looking down at my papers and he just looked up, eye contact locked in, and he said, "Have you got dyslexia?" Now my heart stopped because I thought, I have. Is this a bad thing? This is going to stop me getting in. I had to make a quick decision, and I just thought integrity is the best way. And I said, "Yes, I've got dyslexia." And he says, "Well, you got the highest scores of everybody today, but your English score was low. This is how we've been able to identify you got dyslexia." So then I had to do additional English tests just to see how bad the dyslexia was. Then I passed them, and that's how I ended up getting to UK intelligence community by passing those additional tests. And then I was given a mentor who guided me through my career when it came to the English side. So, and then you ended up becoming my mentor when I started my first business as well. So there you go. It's always good to have a mentor in your life.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
So I'm wondering, Mr. 1%, can you solve this?
I could solve that in my sleep.
So for those
Cool,
for those
thanks,
listening,
Nathan.
for those on audio, I held up a Rubik's cube. That's what I held up.
Yeah, sure. No, I think it's a fascinating. We love these stories, don't we? And we could go into that deeper, but I think now, bearing in mind in the military intelligence community, you can't actually say who you worked for, so you won't mention those. Maybe not mention all those organizations at the moment. But what I think my connections would love to hear is you guys were keeping the Western world safe, and that was your jobs. So over to you, Darren. What kind of things were you doing in your teams? What were you doing to keep the world safe? Keep us safe from the bad guys. What kind of things do you get up to?
Yeah. So when I first got in as an agent in Charlotte at the cyber squad, we were handling intrusions into companies. Say, hey, I got hacked or something bad happened. Ransomware wasn't a thing yet. It was mostly there was some data breach stuff and some website taking over and things like that. And I got involved with a source who was involved with what we called the wares community. These were individuals online that were in organized groups that they bypassed security encryptions on software, movies, music, games, and then released them for free. So you could download anything you wanted for free. And it was several $1 billion of loss per year as estimated by business experts. That was a result of this, and it was a crime. There was a federal statute that said you couldn't do that kind of thing. So I was able to I did an undercover for 5 years, and was embedded with these guys, created their infrastructure that they would download all of their illegal stuff to my site. Fortunately, when they did that, I got their IP address that I could then trace and find who they were and then go arrest them. And so we arrested a bunch of folks off of that. And then we went to headquarters, ran some programs specifically targeting Russian cyber actors. So I got to go to Russia several times to speak with my counterparts in the FSB, which is the Russian Internal Intelligence Service, if you will. Not a whole lot accomplished there, but we made a strong effort to try. Then later in later terms of my career, I went into this counterintelligence side, but with the cyber mix, and basically tried to target cyber bad actors for nation state entities like China, Iran, Russia, stuff like that. And my last posting, I ran a counterintelligence squad, which did some cyber stuff and did some traditional counterintelligence where we had assets of foreign countries stealing information. I'm in Huntsville, Alabama, so it's home of the Redstone Arsenal. It's basically where all of the U.S. Army's missile and missile defense dogma is created. The Saturn V rocket that went to the moon was created here when Werner von Braun and the rest of the German scientists in World War II defected to the U.S., they settled here. And so that's why all the missile stuff is created here. Anyway, so we have people that were spying for China and for Russia that were stealing stuff, and we targeted those folks. So that's a thumbnail sketch at a lot of it. If you want to get into specifics on it later, you can, but that's kind of the general gist. It ran across a lot of
5 years undercover with the guys kind of stealing all that stuff, and then time over in Russia, chasing down Chinese spies.
Just visiting Russia. I didn't spend a lot of time there. It was like a couple days at a time.
Oh, so you were drunk for most of that time then, no doubt.
I was, yes.
Yeah.
because they made me. Every time you drink with the Russians, you drink vodka. I had first time there, probably hadn't had alcohol, a drop of alcohol in 15, 16 years because I just wasn't my thing. But you had to have it with dinner, and it was usually started at lunchtime. We had these luncheons with the Russian counterparts. It was always at a Georgian restaurant. And for all the Georgians out there, I'm about to offend, your food sucks. It was horrible food. The only thing that made it tolerable was, I guess, the vodka. And I kept trying to like finish every time I would get down almost to my cup of vodka being empty, some douchebag would come over and fill it with more. So I'm like, come on, man.
Yeah. So over to you, Michael. I'm very aware there's certain things you can and can't tell me, and as you've told me several times, you're far too pretty for jail. So there's a lot of things you can not share. But what are the kind of things that you were doing to keep us safe, or what can you tell us, I should say?
So, because I started my career in cybersecurity, so we'll start with there. My job as a security analyst was to analyze the threats that were coming to the UK. So this is from threat nations from around the world. So your Chinas, your Russias, your North Korea, your Irans. They were on the daily trying to cyber attack the UK. So we would be working in a SOC, which is a security operations center, and monitoring the threats that are coming in. And when the threats get to a certain level, then you've got to act upon them and make sure the threats don't come through the back door effectively. So the bad guys are knocking at the back door, they're knocking at the back door, and you've got to just keep pushing against the back door so they don't come in. So that's where I started, but I got quite bored of it. So I've got a very analytical mind. So I did enjoy the problem solving part to it, but I started getting bored of it. And I was like, what can I do now? So then I went on to do more analytical work. So I then went on to do like OSINT and an
Can you explain what
intelligence.
OSINT is?
So an OSINT is open source intelligence. So I went on to be like an OSINT analyst and an intelligence analyst. So what I did there is I would be working with, counterparts in the UK. So you've got UK Special Forces, the Foreign Office, the Home Office, UK government, like Downing Street, etc. We would be partnering with them on operations to not monitor actually, to assess the threats that are coming through. So effectively what happens is you work in an int cell, so an intelligence cell, and you've got a team of perhaps 5 people and you've all got a different niche skill set. So you're working on an operation with these bodies, like I said, your special forces, Downing Street, the Foreign Office, and you'll be on a specific operation and you've got a specific task to analyze. So you go through the intelligence cycle. So you've got your direction, which is this is the mission. Then you've got your collection. So you're collecting all the intelligence, you're working with neighboring bodies. So we did operations with the US as well, the US intelligence services. Then you've got to so collection, direction, collection, processing. You then got to process the intelligence to then prepare it for dissemination. And that's when you start creating intelligence reports, which again go to these bodies that I was talking about. So we were working on operations, which was effectively for terrorists. It was a terrorist intelligence cell. So we were trying to prevent terrorist attacks happening in the UK. So that's what I was doing when I was an intelligence analyst. Then I went on to do the intelligence officer role. So that was more like the surveillance, the physical security aspect. So that's the guy who's in the shadows and spying on the bad guys that are doing the bad things. So you've got to stay at a distance, monitor what they're doing, monitor their movements, tap their phones, listen to phone calls, all this good stuff. All the stuff you see in a James Bond film basically is what you had to do at that point. So again, we were successful in stopping a lot of terrorist attacks. In fact, John, we had this conversation earlier, right? And I said to you, how many successful terrorist attacks have happened in the UK in the last 25 years? And you were like, I don't know, maybe 5? We were stopping hundreds a year. And they're the ones you don't hear about in the news because they were successfully stopped. And I'd imagine it'd be the same in the US for Darren. If they successfully stop a cyber attack, they successfully stop a terrorist attack, the UK population, the US population is protected from that information. They won't be told that we successfully stopped an attack. Um, and this touches on what you said at the beginning there is the UK and the US population are so well protected from these threats that they're able to go about their day-to-day life and not really care about threats because the intelligence community does such a great job. They don't have to worry about it. But if the population was exposed to what me and Dan have seen and what we've dealt with and how many we've actually stopped, then I think we'd be having a different conversation.
I completely agree. I mean, I've not been around this world for a time, and yeah, talking to you two of the last 6 months or so, 9 months, it's not that you tell me much because you can't, but it's pretty mind blowing what's actually happening and the stuff that you're doing and everything else. And I want to touch on this later on some questions, but the frustrations in your community is that most business owners, most people don't take it seriously, and you know what's happening, how many attacks are ongoing every single day, and what the bad guys are trying to do. Why they're taking it seriously. And my thoughts are, you guys just do such a good job. We can go about our life and don't have to worry about it. And we become very, very naive. But places like China, places like Iran, the general population there, I would suggest, are far more aware. Certainly Russia, they don't say anything. Outside the family home, maybe, because they know we have people who are listening. And we've never had to worry about that. But I think that's unfortunately kind of changing a little bit. So thank you guys. It's really interesting stuff. I've got a bunch of questions from people that have come in. So I'm going to start. This is one from Venetia. Here we go. Venetia Chatsimichali, Italian. How can I become a spy? Before we go any further, do you call each other spies? Do you have we go for a spy meeting? So like Spy Team Alpha, Spy Team Bravo. What?
No, so I'm going to debunk that. In the world, we actually cringe at the word spy. We do not like to be, it's not like you go down the corridor and it's like, hi, spy, and another one's like, hi, spy. Like, no, we don't do that. We actually cringe at the word spy, but the Hollywood blockbusters has given us that label, so it's kind of ran with it that that's what they get called. So no, we don't call each other spies. We just call each other Mike and Darren.
Or are they code names? Because they could be. So Venetia says, how can I become a spy or an intelligence operator, whatever it might be? How do you do that?
She live in Italy?
Sorry?
Does she live in Italy or she live in the UK? Where she lives?
Oh no, she's in the UK. She's UK based now, yeah.
Well, I can't answer that question. I don't know what the application process is. Mike, go ahead.
So there's the official way and there's the unofficial way. So I'm going to keep myself safe and go with the official way. So the official way is you can go onto websites of either GCHQ, MI5, or MI6 and put an application in. The application process is really straightforward. The only advice I would give if you're going to put an application for those three is what a lot of people do is they talk about like why they want to become a spy, and it's almost like they really it's like since I was a child I've wanted to become a spy. After I watched James Bond, I wanted to become a spy. That tells the intelligence community you would be a really bad spy. And the reason being is because you're a fantasist, you're not going to be effective. So if you come in with what it is you bring to the table, so for example, can you speak multiple languages? Have you got a skill set that, to quote, have you got I've got a what's that, a specific set of skills, uh, to quote that film. So if you've got, something that's different that brings to the table, then that's going to push you up. So don't go in saying, I watch James Bond, I want to be a spy, and I want to do all these cool things. Go to the table with what you're going to bring to the table. That's what will get you ahead of the pile.
Cool. Thank you for that. So another
It
one.
might be worth because there might be US listeners. Darren,
Yes,
what's
good
the
point.
process
Good
for
point, Dan. What's your
FBI?
thoughts? Yeah.
Well, yeah, same thing. If you want to join one of the three-letter agencies, you go to their website and they usually have a career page or a hiring page, or you can go USA.jobs and it'll say, here's the positions we're applying for. And again, it's in the FBI, there's two distinct roles. There's special agent roles and then there's support roles. So special agents are the ones who carry the guns and have the badges and do the arrest powers. The support roles are everybody else who supports that mission. The computer scientists and the IT professionals and the administrative assistants and all that stuff that keeps the other stuff going. There's more of them than there are agents. So you apply to go down which track you want to go down. For example, my daughter-in-law works for the FBI, but she's a contract specialist. So she makes sure that all the contracts get signed off or confirmed or whatever, stuff like that. CIA, NSA, all those other ones have their own requirements and their own duties and roles, and they do different things. So they all have different missions. So you got to figure out which mission you want to do. Do you want to arrest people? Do you want to hack into foreign countries? That's the NSA. If you want to go live overseas in an embassy and spy there, then CIA is where you want to go. So, but again, depends on what you want to do. Depends on what your tolerance is for doing things. We had a guy who showed up to the FBI Academy, the new agent class, in my new agent class. He found out on day 2 he had to carry a gun, and he quit. Now, you should know that before you go in, but he clearly did not. So he decided not to stick it out. So there was that. But yeah, so know what you want to do, know what you want to get into, and just go apply for it.
I would not have expected an American to not want to carry a gun. That's not what we get.
Not for everybody, man.
That's not the PR that we get. Okay, so this is one from an old friend of mine. I've known this guy for 45 years. He's been in the country just over 45 years. Iranian originally, Human Galankari. Why shaken and not stirred? That's definitely one for you, Mike, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Why shaken and well, sorry, say the question again.
Why shaken and not stirred? Did you get that in basic training?
So again, that's the beauty of Hollywood, right? They just created this James Bond character, and he gets to live this luxurious life where it's Aston Martins, it's shaken, not stirred, it's Russian honey traps, the whole lot. The real world is not like that. I wish I was in bars in London sipping martinis, shaken, not stirred. The reality is 30% of your day is paperwork. And the 70% operationally, you're in a Skoda with a £40 daily food allowance. So I don't think you could get many martinis with £40 in London.
Probably not. I maybe not quite get the honey traps with the Skoda.
Now I like to say, don't blame Hollywood for shaken not stirred. Ian Fleming came up with that character. I'm pretty sure he's from your neck of the woods, so blame him.
Honestly, it's just the reality that again, it's just something that's attached to James Bond films. It's shaken not stirred, right? It's comical, but it's not reality.
But it's good. But it's good movies.
Yeah,
so here's a
absolutely.
good question, actually. I want probably one for you, Darren. I think actually from Richard Dibbins, marketer based in Bristol. What are the UK and USA government's thoughts or plans about AI cyber threats? We've had this conversation before.
There's no plan. You're expecting politicians to know how to do the cybers. Yeah, put your faith elsewhere. There is no plan. Hope it doesn't kill us all. But again, I don't think it's going to kill us all. I mean, Terminator 2 is a movie. Again, Hollywood. Don't take it for granted. So I don't think it's that big a deal. It's a tool. It's just a tool. Like, I mean, go back to 1900 and whatever. When guns came about, banks got robbed a lot more. It's not because the guns made the banks more vulnerable. It's because the bad guys had a new tool they could use that could make their job easier. That's all AI is. It's a tool to make bad guys' job easier. But it also makes the good guys' job easier. So I would say embrace AI, figure out how to use it correctly. Don't rely on it for everything. Certainly been plenty of companies that have entities, lawyers especially, who've done that and gotten burned. Do your own research afterward, but it's a good place to start. Like if you're trying to do an outline for a paper, it'll outline it for you, but don't let it write it for you. I would say that. So as far as like, what's the government's plan for AI? Their plan is to hope it doesn't put them out of business, out of work. I think that's their plan. Mike, you may have a different concept there. Maybe it's different over there in the UK because you're arresting people who get off planes who said a bad meme on a X. So I don't know.
30 words on a tweet. Yeah.
I mean, the UK is going in a horrible direction, isn't it? It's getting really sickening how bad it's going. I'm the same with Darren on that one. Like the UK government, when you've worked for the government, you actually see how bad it is. It's like they don't have a clue what they're doing. They really don't have a clue what they're doing, and they really rely on that you can deliver the goods. What I will say about the government, what is really good about it, and this is a reflection on corporations and businesses in the world that are failing at it. What the government's good at is bringing, so for example, people like me and Darren bring us off the streets, and we've not really got great training, we've not got a great background, we've not got the great certificates and degrees, etc. And they've got the world-class training that gets you from zero to hero. I don't know how they mastered that part. I don't know who came up with that route for government to be able to do that. But that's the one thing I've always supported with the government. Their training is world class,
Well,
and it shows.
it's because they outsource the training. They don't do the training themselves. They outsource it to people who know how to train. That's what they do well. They throw the money at the people who can do the training. Let's keep that in mind for the most part.
Absolutely. So from like a recruitment perspective, it's like you come in as, somebody off the street, like zero, and then you do your training course and then you end up becoming an FBI agent and you're able to protect the country. Like that is an amazing process. But whereas in the civilian world, anybody who's went through the recruitment process, that's the part that fails. So yeah, I can't knock the government for that.
It's make a really good point. I mean, I was going to Royal Marine Commandos all those years ago, and I went through. I remember a bit like the interview that you had, not a different skill sets, but I remember going through my officer selection through the Royal Marine Commandos. I think only someone like 2% passed, and I was one of those. Did it first time, and only 18 years old as well. So, but I remember sat there on that chair with a board of about like 8 people sat in front of me. Yeah, and then looking back, from sort of 16, 17, 18, I had amazing experiences with the Army and the Royal Marines. Yeah, and I think you made a good point. I look at some of my friends, went through Parachute Regiment, Special Forces, Royal Marine Commandos, some incredible individuals, and who knows what they would have achieved outside of the government sector. Yeah, I think it's a great deselection process rather than a selection. And I think you've got some incredible people, and yourselves. Then we've kept this country and our countries and the Western world safe for many, many years, and hope it continues for a long time too.
I do want to modify my statement there that training is good. That the internal training by the people who've done the work is, the same thing with the FBI. The stuff we learned at the academy, from shooting to practical applications, all the stuff that makes you successful at your job is good. I'm talking about, like, if they say, hey, we're going to send you to training for cyber stuff, that's where they outsource their stuff to people who know what they're doing. So they at least have the knowledge today. Let's make sure the people training know what they're doing, as opposed to, having
tick boxes.
Someone not do it. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when you go for the basic training, you're getting trained by people who've been there, done that. They've got their stripes, they've got their medals. They know what they're talking about. You cannot question these guys. They know exactly what they're talking about. They know what they're doing. Whereas when you look at the civilian world, especially from a cybersecurity perspective, private businesses are wanting cybersecurity candidates with all these list of certifications, and they need 3 years experience for an entry-level job. And the certificates they're asking for, you need to have 5 years experience for an entry-level job. So that the process is completely broken when you compare it from government to private, completely broken. So I always say, people, it's completely up to you how you take this. But if I was to restart my life again at the age of 18, I wouldn't change what I did. I would know what I know now. I would join the government to learn everything I need to learn, get all the skills, exit, and then go into the private world.
Mm-hmm.
If you go in the private world, you're going to struggle. You're absolutely going to struggle. So even join the military, join the government, local authorities, do that route, then go in the private world. Because what you'll find is the private world, they will pay you a lot of money because they know what you've come from. So in some cases, you can actually write your own checks. And especially if you've got a security clearance, because when you go for the government, it's highly likely you get a security clearance. So you've got X amount of years experience, X amount of operational experience, security clearance. If you go to the private world, like a defense company, a tech company, and say, this is who I am, this is my background, they'll be like, here's the checkbook, how much do you want?
And I can attest to that, because I retired from the FBI 2 days after I was eligible. And 2 months before I retired, I was meeting with the company I ended up going working for. And it was one of those things where he slid me a piece of paper across the table with the salary on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not what it was more than I was going to ask for. Let's just say that. So.
Well, that's good. That's really interesting, because I think in your world, you've got such a particular set of skills to grow a film again. Very specialist, very in demand, very, very high level. I think if you look at, and I've got a friends in the military, Marines or whatever it might be, their skills aren't really in demand. You couldn't say management, you could say man management, leadership and things, but stripping and cleaning a rifle, blindfold, injured, middle of the night, under attack isn't really useful in CV3. But what I find interesting, we had this conversation today, Mike, about someone, in our world in security, and actually employed someone from one of the arms of the armed forces here and just got rid of them in a matter of weeks because they didn't have the mindset. And I think that's what I like about my military background. You give them the job, you get it done. And so many soldiers that I know have come out just do not understand how civilians argue or just about what they're told to do or just don't want to do it. And I think we're wired differently. But that's a whole nother thing coming out, I think. But I think to go on to that question there, we didn't really answer properly. AI is coming and AI is going to be here. And I've made it very clear, the government are not going to protect us. And I think that's us as a Western world. We pay our taxes. We expect to be protected. And I think those days are gone for a number of reasons. But it's coming, and it's coming harder and faster than most of us kind of realize. And for those of you guys are into tech, most people aren't. It's just a confusing, horrible, scary thing that we don't really understand. So what's your thoughts on what might be happening or already is happening in terms of cybersecurity just for businesses, for the SME world, for people like you and me? Well, not like you, like me, average kind of people who don't get it. What's so many happening from the threats, and what should we be aware of, do you think?
So one thing I will add on the government side there, just had a thought there. What you'll find is, and you had this conversation with me and Darren because we were ex-government employees, we don't know how to run a business, right?
Yeah.
And business owners don't know how the government works. So when we're talking about AI here, right, the government's in their bubble. They don't know really what AI is. Any government employee, they don't really know what it is. They don't know how to work it. The businesses that invented it, not as an open AI, but the AI that they've created that does this Gucci thing, they've created, they understand the product. So what you tend to find usually is the smart tech guys get hired by the government to do government projects and they get paid a boatload of money to do it. So you won't find an internal government employee who will do the AI stuff. They'll get the smart guy who works for a business to come in as a contractor, which again is put the amount on the contract how much you want and we'll pay it.
Wow.
So that's one important thing. The cyber threats, I'll let Darren go first for that one.
Well, I think too many people, too many businesses don't even understand what the cyber threats are. They have no intelligence feed. They're not paying attention to it because they think I'm too small to be targeted. Haven't been targeted yet, so clearly not a problem. So why should I worry? Nothing's happened. Well, I haven't had a heart attack yet, but I still go have my heart checked out every once in a while to make sure it's still working and then the arteries aren't clogged. So, you still need to be aware of the problems out there and take matters to try to address it. You got to stop thinking of cybersecurity, physical security, threat intelligence as a cost to your business. It certainly is a cost. You're going to have to pay for it. But if you pay $20,000 a year for cybersecurity or whatever, $30,000 for a consultant or whatever, you could do that for 20 years. Let's say you did that for 20 years and you paid $600,000 over 20 years, but you never had any kind of cyber incident, cyber attack, ever had to worry about anything else. How much has your business improved in that 20 years that you have not had that attack? If you have one attack in that 20 years, it's going to cost you $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million. How's that going to work? Or is it going to put you out of business? The Knights of Old, logistics company in the UK, out of business, one ransomware attack, had insurance wouldn't pay, couldn't afford it. Boom, $1 million, they're done. So that's the thing we have to get over companies have to get over is that preventative cost, be it a cost, is still more cost effective than the disease.
Good answer. Mike, for you.
What I would add to that is a couple of things. There's a couple of layers to this. The first one is, and I've said this to you millions of times, so you're gonna roll your eyes when I say this, right? I've said this loads of times, right? If it was scientifically possible, right, that the average business owner in the UK and the US we're able to get mine and Darren's brain and eyeballs into their body and process what we've seen in our careers. And then they go back. So it's like a memory stick, right? It's lodged in memory. They get their own brain and eyes back, and then they continue with life. I am almost certain, and I would never ever say almost certain. Highly likely is what I would as high as would go, right? I am almost certain that person would look at security completely differently. Because what me and Dan have been exposed to, we've seen the real threats, we've seen the real damages, we've seen the real victims. And every person I ever dealt with always spoke in pretense. It was, I wish I had done dot 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 dot. And that happens in everything. Like every crime, when somebody's the victim, they always speak in the past. I wish I had done. I wish I took this route. It's like when you have a car crash, it's like, oh, if I just left 5 minutes later, I wouldn't have been in that car crash. It's that type of mentality, right? Um, and then the other layer I would add onto it as well is, and I think this is a cybersecurity community problem more than the customer's problem. We don't define what cybersecurity is that well, right? So you said what cybersecurity should companies get, right? And then Darren's talking about, oh, you spend $20,000, you get this and blah, blah, blah. But we're not actually breaking down what is it they actually need with regards to cybersecurity. Because there's like something like 30 plus jobs you can do, and they all have a different type of service. So, for example, you've got a SOC service, a security operations center service that manages your endpoint. So it manages your um, all the systems you're using, your phones, your laptops, your computers, printers, is monitoring it 24/7 to see if there's any threats coming through the systems to the devices. So that's one cost. Then you've got cyber penetration testing. So that's to test your systems to see if there's any back doors that are open. Then you've got the GRC, which is policies. So you're creating the policies to say, basically, this person or our employees can't watch porn at work, right? For example, how many businesses do you think in the UK have that in their policies? You cannot watch porn at work. And they've got the systems in play that if somebody types in Pornhub, it will block it. You can't go on that website. And then the list is endless, like the services you can get. So therefore, I think the customers or businesses need to be educated on all these different things you can get. Some people think cybersecurity is just it's a software. It's a one-stop shop software, that's all it is. It just protects computers. Cybersecurity is a lot more than that. So you need to look at, like, if you're speaking to a business owner, you need to understand what matters most to them, right? What is it that matters most to them? What's their risk tolerance and what's their budget? Create a create a plan in their budget based on the risk profile, based on what matters most to them. Then when you start showing value on the things that they asked for, they will then start to increase the budget because it's, this is actually working. This is stopping. These data metrics are either going up or down, whether it's positive or negative. So that's what I would add.
Well,
I think Darren wants to say something. I could
yeah,
tell.
as a friend of mine likes to say, every business wants an easy button for cybersecurity. That's it. What can I push that'll solve my problem? And that does not exist, will not exist, cannot exist.
No.
It's a whole load of stuff that, thanks you guys. But I think, Darren, you talk about the 360 security that we provide. Can you kind of describe what that is? Mike touched on it, but I think, and you said something really interesting there, Mike. Yeah, one, it's not just a button, but it's not just cyber. We think we can get a bit of software and it will take care of it, but it's not. And I think, well, I want to move our conversation onto this at the moment. Talk about that 360 and why it's so important to understand those 360 areas and what we need to start thinking about.
Right. So when we started talking about what this company would look like, cybersecurity was a big piece of it, but it's not the only piece. And so there's three pieces, our 360 degrees security mission, I guess, if you will, is there's three parts to this circle. There's the cybersecurity piece, the physical security piece, and the threat intelligence piece. So with threat intelligence, you can decide, okay, what cybersecurity controls do I need to pay attention to because this is the threats targeting me? But additionally, what are the physical security controls I need to do? Because if bad actors, now criminal bad actors are going to come at you from a cyber perspective primarily, not so much a physical perspective. But if you're in critical national infrastructure space, whatever that looks like, whatever country you're in, and then they all kind of have, most countries have the same critical national infrastructure entities: water, health, logistics, transportation, supply chain, power, gas, whatever, chemical, stuff like that, emergency medical services. It's nation state actors that are going to target those entities to get their information. And they're not going to do it just by cyber means. They're going to do it by physical means, meaning they're going to send people to do it. There was a case I was managing at headquarters in the FBI in the middle 2000s, and we had intelligence that there was a particular telecommunications company whose intellectual property that kind of ran their crown jewels, that ran the bulk of what their system did. Like the important piece that if they lose this, they got big problems. They had it in an isolated, air-gapped computer in a locked room in this building in Florida. And the room had blue walls, and that'll become important in a minute. Well, we gathered intelligence where we saw a Chinese handler talking to his Chinese spy who was in Florida saying, you need to get into that blue room. So they knew the room was blue. They knew where the stuff was. They were trying to send someone there physically to try to get to it because they knew that cyber-wise they couldn't. It's kind of like that Mission Impossible scene in the first Mission Impossible where Tom Cruise comes out of the ceiling to steal the knock list, right? It's that, I mean, they're not going to do it that way, but it's that kind of idea where they couldn't hack it, so they had to send someone at it from a physical perspective. So if you're a company and you're not looking at all of those three things, you're only doing part of your job. That's our opinion, right? That's how we look at it from that perspective, is how you secure yourself. And there's plenty of companies that all they do is a cyber piece, and that's fine. That's the niche that they do. There's some that do the physical piece, but we try, because of our skill sets, try to combine those two things together to give you a more holistic security overview so you don't become a victim. How do you not become a victim? That's what we're trying to prevent.
So you have the cyber threats, the people hacking in, going through the back doors, everything else. As you said, it's just as easy to get into a building, trick your way in, which can happen pretty easily because I'm ex-military. We had guards on the gates. We patrolled. We checked vehicles. We did all that ourselves. I'm a bit more aware than most people. But the civilians, someone's got a good cover story, can quite easily get into a building, which I'd love you to share your stories in a minute, Mike. And they can get a flash drive in there. They can take photos. They could do all kind of stuff. But the other thing that interests me is you talk about threat intelligence, and I've renamed that into commercial threat intelligence, Mike, because we had a conversation with a business not so long ago, and I don't mind sharing this live. We obviously won't say who the business is, and they had a really nice company. They were supplying the logistics sector. And they bought, so I won't say what it is, but they supplied some very interesting gadgets. But they got all the gadgets from China, and they're supplying our supply chain, supplying our logistics. Now we know that the bad actors, the state nation actors, are wanting to get into our supply chain and our logistics to slow or shut the country down. And it's only after talking to you two, it suddenly hit me, my God, they get all their stuff from China. They're supplying it to our logistics sector. We know how good the Chinese are on their cyber side of things. And being a relatively small company, their defenses are not that good. And they could very easily utilize them to get into kind of supply chain. Now, most of us, and you said earlier, we think we're too small. Why would they bother with me? And as you said, sometimes you're just collateral damage. You're not important. So do you want to say a little bit of something? Because this is where this commercial intelligence comes in, and I think when, especially from both of your backgrounds, I know you did a lot of this with working with special forces and the government and things, Mike, taking all that intel and then creating a picture of the potential threat. And I think most businesses don't think to look at that. They're just busy driving revenue, driving growth, driving profits, not realizing what's going on the outside. So do you want to say a little bit of something about that commercial threat intelligence piece, Mike, and why maybe the sand is shifting a bit, that businesses need to start thinking a bit more cleverly?
Yeah, so officially in the intelligence community is called counter threat intelligence, but we've brought it civil-like and called it commercial threat intelligence. So it sounds a little bit more friendlier. So effectively what it is you this is what an intelligence analyst would do. It's what I was talking about earlier, where you go for the intelligence cycle. You've got the direction, collection, processing, dissemination. So the company you're speaking to, their direction is we want to supply the UK logistics industry with our Gucci kit that comes from China. Now, the collection piece is, okay, I need to now look at what's your supply chain there and where's the risks in the supply chain. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to collect all the intelligence and then process it. So what I was able to process with this company is they were doing business in China. Now, a little bit of a background story. When I was part of the community, me and my colleagues and our bosses were going to the UK government and saying, we cannot protect businesses and the national security of the UK at the same time. There's not enough budget, there's not enough manpower, there's not the skill set is we can't keep up. It's too much. Our argument is businesses should be looking after themselves because they make their own profit margins, right? They make their own money. They should be looking after themselves. National security is supplied financially by the taxpayers' money. So why should a taxpayer be paying us to protect a business? That's not good financial investment, right? Businesses should be doing it themselves. So what happened is over time the government started listening, and this is why they introduced the Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill. And what they've done is the government have put the top 5 industries that are most at risk from cyber attack. So these are MSPs, data centers, critical infrastructure, energy, and logistics. So, sorry, not logistics, supply chain, but logistics comes under supply chain. So supply chain of the UK is a massive target. Logistics companies are a massive target. Now, the bad guys, China, want to disrupt the supply chain of the UK. They want to weaken it. They are doing the same in the US as well. They want to weaken the supply chain because China wants to become the global powerhouse of the world. Now, the reason you're going to become a global powerhouse is if you economically disrupt and lower the value of a country, right? So the company we're talking about, they're doing business in China. Now, the way China is set up is not the same as the luxury we've got in the UK and the US, where it's a democracy, it's a dictatorship. So the government runs the country, and whatever the government says is what goes. So because the government has free reign in China, the data centers that are in China are owned and run by the Chinese government. So it's in the Chinese government's interest to get as much data from abroad into their data centers because they can access at any point and see what's coming through. So DeepSeek is a good example. That came out last year. It's a Chinese open AI that you can use, it's like ChatGPT, but that was from China. So anything you're putting into DeepSeek, the Chinese government can access. And there was cases that happened where people were putting documents onto DeepSeek that they shouldn't be putting on. So bringing it back onto track here, the companies going to China, buying the products, the data has to get stored somewhere, and it gets stored in the data center in China. The Chinese government has access to that data in the data center. Then the Gucci kit is coming from China to the UK. Now, when we spoke to that company, I asked really simple questions. Have you checked the kit? Have you opened it up to see if there's any listening devices, any cameras, anything in the kit? No, we've never done that. So, and that kit is then going to the logistics industry. So if you remember what I said, logistics industry is the big target. China wants to disrupt logistics industries because that's the backbone of the UK. That's what moves the UK. So if Chinese government don't need to send spies to the UK to physically try and penetrate buildings or cyber attack. No. What we can do is we can just put our listening devices and videos into the kit. We'll hold the data ransom in the data centers and send it all the way back to the UK. And then this little company is going to give it to the logistics companies. So now the Chinese government is in the logistics industry's infrastructure. Now, what we know from what me and Darren's done is if there's like a listening device that can access the systems in a company, you can set up signals and set up connections where it could go internally into the logistics industry. So they could get a cyber attack just from this piece of kit that's in the company.
So a
So the
piece of kit, just it could somewhat send off a bit of Bluetooth, bit of Wi-Fi, send us or hack onto like a Wi-Fi signal, just by being
effective,
within X number of
right.
meters, probably 100 meters, just being close enough, you can log into their Wi-Fi to get in to extract what it wants.
One of the best examples of this is 2018. There was a case the FBI ran, and a report on this came out in 2021 in Bloomberg. And essentially, Supermicro was a motherboard created. They created motherboards for computers and servers and systems like that. And so they were manufactured in China or a Chinese adjacent country. And China was able to implement a little chip on each of these motherboards about the size of a pencil eraser that beaconed at certain intervals. And these motherboards went to companies like Amazon, Apple, and 30 large companies in the U.S. that use these motherboards for their servers. And then one at least smart company in San Jose did some testing and said, why, like every whatever time period, this thing like beacon does some kind of weird beacon. And then they figured out that it was transmitting information back. So, I mean, if you think that China's not trying to get in the supply chain and get in wherever they can, abuse yourself of that notion because you are incorrect.
So yeah, I totally agree with Darren just said there, and this is what I tried to explain to this company because they got very defensive, and it's like we're too small. Why would somebody target us? And it's like I don't want to damage your ego, but you're not the precious one here. Like China doesn't care about you. You're just the collateral damage because they told us who their customers were, and they were big companies in the
Yeah,
UK.
yeah,
That's the target. Again, from a counter threat intelligence perspective, if I was going to damage the Chinese economy and try and disrupt their supply chain from a UK intelligence perspective, I would do the same thing as what they've just done. I would find a small company in China that buys something from the UK, lace it with everything, send it over, and hopefully it goes to their supply chain in China and then disrupt it there.
And I know people are thinking, but Darren, but Mike, but John, I have an iPhone. That all comes from China. Should I be worried? And yes,
Well,
you probably should, but you have to hope. You have to hope. That's all we can do is hope that Apple's supply chain risk management program does the job it's supposed to do. It may not be, which is why if you're a company owner, don't buy buy your employees phones. Don't buy your employee company phones. Don't bother. Don't they just don't or at least tell them that you cannot put sensitive corporate data on your phone and just
mm,
assume that it might be lost. Now keep in mind, you know, is China pulling everybody's information from every iPhone and going through it? Maybe they are pulling it. Are they going through it all? No. AI can help with that certainly, but
yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't buy an iPhone because Android same. I mean, we're screwed either way. All that stuff's coming from China, so I mean, the computer this particular program is being run through is a Mac Mini that I'm pretty sure was shipped directly from China to my house. So you have
Well,
to
I've got
you
I've
have to
got solar panels on my house. They're made in China, I'm sure. I'm probably tapping into. I'm going to start wearing a colander on my head.
I
yeah.
mean, you only have to look at Ed and Snowden. For anybody who doesn't know Ed and Snowden, Google him. Like, you only have to look at what he revealed about what happened, like with the um what the US government was doing and the UK government as well, for that matter, what they were up to. He was the person that almost he was the person that started the conspiracy theories that exist today
Yes.
because he
Correct.
released so much sensitive information, TS information about what the NSA and GCHQ were up to. So this just spiraled into these conspiracy theories that the government's listening and blah blah blah. So it's almost like if you believe that the UK and US government's listening to you, then you can almost bet that the Chinese and the Russian government are also listening to you. Now, I'm going to debunk a theory here, right? if you're an average person who's got an average 9 to 5, your life is pretty boring. The government are listening, but they really don't care about what you are doing. They don't care that you're watching porn. They don't care that you are looking at, cars for sale on Auto Trader. They don't care, right?
But they're not, hold on, Mike. They're not listening. They may be collecting, right? There may be
Collect. Okay,
data
that's a better
collected,
term.
but
That's a better
no
term.
one is going through every line and saying, hey, look, Darren, John, and Mike are having a podcast. Let's listen in while they're doing it. They're not doing any of that shit. I mean, they have programs that trigger on code words. So if we were
Yep.
to say Al Qaeda blow up Parliament, then sure, they're going to listen a little deeper to that particular conversation. But then they're going to realize it's a podcast and they're making fun of the government, so we can move on with our lives. But if you're calling your aunt Greta and saying what's your porridge recipe? I'm trying to use British terms. Porridge is not something you hear, but I assume you guys do.
Porridge.
Porridge and biscuits. What's your porridge and biscuits recipe? Then they're not gonna pay attention.
No,
if you make certain jokes, you might get arrested over here. Though we have got to be careful.
Yeah,
about that.
Well, yeah. Okay. I'll scrub my Twitter before I come over there, just in case.
That's what I'm getting to is like the government can access this information, but the primary objective is the government are trying to protect the country. They're trying to keep it safe. So they don't really care like what you are doing. I mean, the UK is going in a completely different direction, so I might be contradicting myself here. But if you're just doing normal things, the government don't really care, right? It's what the bad guys are doing. That's what they care about. So there's certain, I'm not going to say them on this podcast because I guarantee you'll get somebody who'll go away and do it just to test the theory, right? But there's certain buzzwords that if you search into Google, you will get a chat from the government. 100%, no questions asked. There is some keywords if you put into Google, you will get a chat from the government. That's in the UK. I don't know if it's the same in the US, but in the UK.
No, it's not. It's not in the US because we can't collect on US citizens. They may do it, right? There's certainly been instances where it's happened. It's illegal by law, but you have to unmask the person. You wouldn't know who it was unless you unmasked it, which has been some issues from there. So it's a little harder here. Our rules are a little different because you can certainly get into trouble in the government if you do that. Not to say to feed the conspiracy theorists, not to say that it may not have happened, but it is a little more difficult in that perspective. Yeah, if you say the right word, then they may unmask and do a deeper dive, but they're not going to come to your house unless they have reason to believe and exigent circumstances to do so. So, yeah, I mean,
Cool.
we sometimes we complain about the government and its ineffectiveness, but then we think it's this massive behemoth that's listening to everything we do. So which one is it? You take your pick. Which side are we going on here?
Let's check. Sorry, Mike, go on.
No, I was just laughing at Dan's joke there. It was a good one.
Okay. Yeah, it was good. So on that, we've been on like an hour already, so I want to kind of
we're at
wrap
an
it
hour,
up.
so you might want to get to your final questions.
Yeah, final questions. I think there's lots of things I wanted to chat. I think we need to go and do another one of these because I wanted to get.
I think what you should do, John, is you need to have a raffle. Have lunch with an FBI agent and a
that'll be good.
Military UK military guy, and then there you go.
Yeah, and they got to pay the airfare from Alabama over to London, so it's going to be expensive.
I'll be there on Zoom. I can zoom in.
But I have got just two questions that came through actually. One is from our friend Paige Hanson. Oh, you've disappeared again. Hang on a minute. Hold on a minute. It came up and now it's gone. Let's see if I can find her question.
Hey, John's having technical problems. Who's shocked?
Yeah, what a surprise. Here we go. Here she is. This is from Paige Hanson, and we know Paige. Have you ever been in, and I've not pre-read this, so I hope it's going to be sensible. I'm sure it will. Have you ever been in a situation where you knew who the bad guy was, but had to wait for the law to catch up, like waiting on warrants or sign-offs, and they got away? Oh. If so, what would you change about the process? I imagine your cases took a long time to build. Oof.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I'm sure that's happened many times in my career where certainly you knew who it was and you just needed the right amount of evidence to do it, and something happened and they got away. I mean, especially if they're foreign nationals that are doing work here from from an intelligence collection perspective or from a terrorism perspective, they could leave at a moment's notice while you're waiting for the lawyers to do what the lawyers do to get approval for stuff. Certainly Or the bigger thing for me is we knew they had a piece of infrastructure we wanted to tap or monitor. And by the time we got the legal authority to do it, they'd moved on to a different phone. That happened many times where we went through this long process where the federal judge has to approve everything. It's got to go through the Department of Justice. They review it 75 times. You have to do all this stuff, swear to it. And then you say, okay, everything's good to go. They don't have that phone anymore. Yeah, start over with all the new information. So certainly that happens. But in my earlier career, when I knew who everybody was because they were sending me their IP addresses, I pretty much got all of them because they didn't know what was going. They didn't know that they were being targeted until the day we showed up at their door at 6 a.m. and said, "Hey, guess what we got for you?" There was one guy in Germany. Actually, there was a guy in Germany who was using his neighbor's Wi-Fi to do his illegal activity. So it took a little longer to get him, but we did ultimately get that guy as well.
I mean, it's the same in the UK. There's a lot of red tape, and it's not something I want to get too deep into. So I'm just going to leave it there. There's a lot of red tape, and the process is very frustrating. What would I change? I think Dan's going to agree with me on this one. More or better relationships with the agencies.
Mm-hmm.
There's too much flexing. There's too much we're better than you. It's kind of like the same in the military where you've got the army, the RAF and the Navy. They all think they're better than each other and they all try and flex their biceps to say who's better than who. It's the same thing with the intelligence community. It's we're better than you, we do this better than you. And because you're doing all this flexing on biceps, then things
slip.
Why was it the difference there? I think, at least in my experience, is it's not the operators, the on the ground operators. Doesn't matter who agency you're. If you got a mission, you all work together. The leadership are the idiots that cause the problems.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, that's the problem.
Makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense. So changing direction here. This is for the last question from the lovely Liz Smith from Devon. Now she lives in Devon. Darren, so you know you've got to talk really slowly because she's from Devon. So talk about undercover agents and life of spies and everything else. How can you do your job and be married? Because marriage is typically built on trust, honesty, and no lies.
What's your name? Liz?
Liz.
Liz, what kind of world are you living in, Liz?
Come on, Liz.
No, so I was undercover for 4 years, but I was an online undercover. So it made it because I wasn't going meeting these guys in person. Certainly that role exists in the FBI where you do that. And usually, I mean, the best example, if you want to see from a cinematic perspective, is Joe Pistone. I'm losing the track of his name. He was undercover with the mob for years. And so he was an FBI agent and he brought part of the mob down. He got a $500 good job award and pat on the back and go with whatever. But so you know that certainly is a problem. And this job has seen many divorces. I would say in this field, the divorce number is probably a higher percentage, simply because you can't talk. I mean, my wife will tell you, I don't know what he did half the time or most of the time. My kids, the same thing. I didn't know what he did half the time or most of the time. So they've learned more listening to my podcast because I can talk a little bit more about it. They learned more what I did listening to the podcast than what I ever did talking because you can't really. It's it's operational security. It's drilled in you. You can't tell your neighbors what you're doing. I mean, Mike's a little different. He probably couldn't tell his neighbors what he worked for, but I could say, yeah, I'm an FBI agent, right? Sure. Absolutely. I could say that and it wasn't a big deal. So then there are some agents that didn't like to do that. I didn't really have a big problem with it. Cause it was cool. So, yeah, I got invited to a lot of parties. Now I'm an introvert, didn't go to any of them, but got invited.
Over to you, Mike. What can you say about this?
I'm with Darren on this one. I think when I was lucky, as I have got a very tolerant wife, so I would go away for weeks at a time and couldn't say where I was going, what I was doing. I would pack a bag and I was going for 2, 3 weeks at a time. But I think when I got quite fortunate is I got married quite early in my career. So my wife went through the journey with me, and she sort of loosely knew what I did. So therefore, I was able to have the conversation and say I need to go away for 2, 3 weeks, and it's like okay, because you can fall into the trap where you know your partner thinks you're having an affair or something, and it's like, no, I'm not having an affair. But you can't really say what you're doing, so you have to be very careful with your wording. I think it's more difficult if you join and then you get married when you're already in, like maybe 5 years into your career and you get married. That's where it's difficult. But if you do it at the beginning, it's a lot easier.
And so, Liz, just so you know, like in the FBI, there's very few undercover agents. No, there's not a lot of people doing the undercover
I'll
stuff. So
be 1 minute, 2 minute.
it's a very small community. So,
Small cohort.
and they
Yeah.
kind of know what they're getting into and what they're doing. But for the majority of agents, it's not an undercover life. Now, CIA is different. CIA, they are spies. They are a little different. They got a little more responsibility. So it's different for those guys. I can't speak to what they do and how they do it, but certainly it's a little more complicated when you're living in foreign lands, especially their adversarial type lands. Like I knew guys that lived in Moscow for years. I mean, they had videos of being followed from their home where they lived to the embassy, and then aggressive following. So that those issues make it much harder, especially for the spouses that move overseas with them. If they
Wow,
want to,
yeah.
like, you know,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, so there is that.
Interesting times. But I think what was nice when Mike said, you know, if I had to go back to when I was 18, I wouldn't change a thing. How about you? Because you started your career as a teacher, then
I
you went
did.
into the FBI.
Right. So
How
I joined
about
the
you?
FBI at 32. I would have done it earlier. If I could do it earlier, I'd have done it earlier.
Fantastic.
But the FBI prefers experience. So it prefers you to go do something for a while before, like they don't want 23-year-olds coming in as agents. Let's be honest, because there's still some immaturity there. They don't have a lot of life experience. They may not be as refined and stuff like that. So I came in at 32, and that's about the average age for agents coming in and when I went through. So
Interesting with Mike, he got married a similar time to when he joined the service, whereas you're saying joining the FBI at 32, many will be married already. So, but then not many of you go undercover.
Sure.
Well, that's it. Like we've done the hour, 1 hour and 10. Thank you for your time, guys. Really appreciate it. There's a whole bunch of really meaty questions I wanted to ask, but we didn't get a chance today. Actually, here's one question certainly for my listeners. Our company name is Five Eyes. So over to you, Mike. Why the name Five Eyes? What does it mean? What's its significance?
So I'm going to make a statement before I answer this question. First things first, you know this is not an AI generated video because I had to go to the door because the postman came. So
no one knew
apologies that I had
if you hadn't said that, no one knew because we were able to divert from that. So, but
yeah,
well done, way to go.
Well, I couldn't hear. I was away, so I apologize. I had to divert. Postman came. Five Eyes. So the reason Five Eyes was created, or the reason that name was created, is because in the intelligence world, there's the Five Eyes organization, and that consists of the US, Canada, UK, Australia, and New Zealand. And it's the intelligence agencies from the five countries. It was set up just after World War II. It started with just the UK and the US. And what the objective was for both countries to share actionable signals intelligence. And then as time went on, Canada, Australia, New Zealand joined, and then it became Five Eyes. So the five nations share actionable intelligence with each other. It's not just signals, it's other intelligence. So we're allies. We are friendly nations. We help each other on intelligence operations. And I thought it was quite a fitting name with me and Darren being intelligence community, UK and US come together. I thought it was quite a fitting name to call it Five Eyes.
And
And we've had quite a lot of positive response from it.
And the other reason, Mike's got a glass eye, so between the three of us, there's only five eyes.
You should have done comedy, Darren. But no, a lot of people have come back and said they really love that name. We've had a lot of positive response from it. But yeah, I just thought it was a fitting metaphor. Our branding as UK and US intelligence community come together, try and make the world 1% safer. So I thought, yeah, Five Eyes sounds like a great name.
It's a good name. I like it. We spent so much time going through different names, and that one stuck, and we love it. Good thinking, Mike. That's it for me, Mike. Darren, thank you so much for your time. My listeners are gonna fully appreciate these stories. And Mike, Darren, is your podcast. I'm gonna hand back over to you.
Thank you, John, and hope this inspired you to start your own podcast. We'll be happy to be guests on it anytime you want, and if you need technical assistance, I'll be happy to assist you.
I'm the tech guy.
Yeah, so thanks so much for taking the time to download and listen to the Five Guys, or this Kingsman and the CyBUr Guy podcast for this week. Yeah, no, the Kingsman and the CyBUr Guy podcast. Okay, it's been a long hour. I mean, got an hour and 10 minutes. We're usually here for a good time, not a long time, but we didn't do that this time. So you can watch this on LinkedIn. You can watch it on YouTube. You can listen to it on your podcast providers. If you do so, please make sure to subscribe and tickle all the fancy algorithms that we all need. For Mike, for John, this is Darren saying thanks for listening. We'll talk again soon.